Hello friends, it's Chromatic Sauce and welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be tattooing this roasted marshmallow design. Now, I designed this one probably within the first few months I ever tattooed, so I'm definitely super stoked to... I never say stoked, but it's funny because there's a fire, so it's like stoked. Anyway, I'm definitely really happy that I've now gotten a chance to tattoo this one. Super pleased, and she didn't really want to change it except making it blue. And if you know me, you know that the only reason my original design was purple was because I make everything blue, so I was definitely happy to make it blue. I love blue, what can I say? Anyway, if you saw me at the beginning there with that little marker, what I was doing was redrawing those guidelines that you see at the top of the marshmallow, just because the original design was flipped. But I don't really like doing moons like upside down where like the crescent is facing the ground. If you can't tell, this is on her thigh. So I always like them to be up, perkier. I feel like it's a little more positive and it looks better. So with the angle that she wanted the marshmallow, I just flipped the design, but I didn't change the stencil, so I just had to redraw that on there. I didn't really have to, but I really like a guideline. Anyway, then you see me hopping in with a nice fat needle there. I think that one was a 14 round shader. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I actually didn't even I don't usually use round shaders, but I need to get some thicker needles. I'm in too much of a habit of using thinner needles, but the past few weeks I've really been making an effort to use thicker needles in certain applications. Not everywhere needs it, but some designs, you know, a bold line is kind of nice. Anyway, so that's what you see me doing here. I'm just like doing a bold outline on... You can kind of see my line weight in the stencil. I like to have like some variety if I can. That's another reason why I've been trying to use like bolder, thicker lines, because when you use too small of lines, the boldness of the lines isn't always evidenced, or like the differences in the lines isn't as easily seen. So I feel like having a wider variety makes the design a little bit bolder and stands out a little bit more. And don't ask me why I tattoo this way. I know you're technically, there's rules, but it's not really a rule. You're kind of supposed to start at the bottom, or like the edge. I don't know if you've ever seen a tattoo get done before, but frequently artists will start at like, if they're right-handed, they would start at the bottom right edge and just go from there. So here, from this angle of like where you can tell I'm sitting, I technically should have started from the tip of the flame working towards the left, changing my needles throughout. I don't know how other people do it really. But what I like to do that just helps me like separate the design and organize it better in my head. I feel like I can maintain consistency in the design if I kind of go by line weight. Now, it's not like an exact science, but generally I tend to do thicker lines first and then work thinner and thinner, and then it's sort of like, well, I can see what's next, like the next step. I can see how many lines are left. I'm able to connect the lines better. Usually the smaller lines are towards the inside, so I really like having that bolder outline done first. That way I can just make sure they're connected at the end. You know, like if I do the thin lines first and then they're not reaching all the way where that bolder outline went, I would have to like touch them up. And you know, like you still kind of have to do that, like double check your lines, make sure everything's meeting, make sure everything's in there. But this is how I like to do it. The bolder lines first, get them in there. You can see as I do it, I do wipe sometimes, but I'm mostly like patting away the ink. I use a lot of ointment, so it sort of creates a barrier, so I'm not really wiping off the stencil the ink doesn't get too much in the skin with all that ointment, so when I dab it, it mostly just absorbs the ink. And you kind of got to get used to like looking at it like that. But sometimes you have to wipe because it's like too much of an ink splat. But that just really depends on like how's the stencil holding up, how close to the edge I am. I'm more likely to just wipe away from the design if it's like at the very edge. Then I could just wipe away from the stencil, and I'm not wiping any of the stencil. There's no way I could wipe the stencil off. But now you see here, I'm finishing up that moon. Anything that's like a perfect circle is going to be a little bit of a challenge. And plus it's the leg, so she's feeling a little twitchy. Sometimes it's hard to keep the leg still, even with your mightiest efforts. It didn't really affect me too much, but it always like adds that extra layer of like, I really hope I don't mess this up, because it's a perfect circle. But I feel like I've been doing like circles and like moons like that for a while. Sometimes it's like a challenge to get those like pointy parts of the moon, because it's hard to make them sharp but not like change the angle of the circle at the same time. So I really was happy with how my moon turned out in this one. I really like how thin I made it. Like I gotta do more like really thin. I don't know, usually recently I don't really make the moons like that pointy, like that close together at the like tips. But I kind of freaking like it. I feel like usually I stop it a little bit sooner, like in recent times. I don't know, I'll have to look. But I really like a skinny moon. I feel like it adds that like celestial element. Is celestial stars? Because a moon wouldn't be stars. But also the original design didn't have stars in it, but the client was sitting there while her friend was getting tattooed. And she just came in for a flash piece, like hoping for the marshmallow, but maybe something else. But we went for the marshmallow, but she also saw on my flashboard a little cluster of stars, and she was like, oh, maybe we could add this. So we got rid of the original background, tilted it. I like to make the stars like straight up and down, like if she's standing, you see the stars straight up and down vertical. Oh, my leg went numb. I'm sitting on the ground recording this. But yeah, I don't know if you saw in the beginning, you might have seen the original like impression of the stencil. Like it was a little slanted, so you can't tell that it's straight on her leg now because we're at such an angle. It's like a weird angle on top of like a weird angle. But when she's standing straight, they're pretty straight. Yeah, I feel like if I did like a slanted twinkle star, it would have to be like purposeful, like 45-degree angle. And I would probably want it to be more like a plus sign, like not like really long. I don't know. I've never really played around with that. Usually for those like traditional, like basic, like straight line stars with the little star in the middle, I'll definitely do them straight up and down vertical. Either way, speaking of the stars and the moon, for those ones and the smaller dots in the background, I used, I believe it was a bug pin 9 round liner. Just to have, I don't know, I just kind of like figure it out as I go. Like I felt like I had the bolder line, and then this one is a little bit less bold while still being kind of thick enough. Also, the moon in the stencil was like definitely a much thinner line, so I definitely couldn't go too big. I really like the size I ended up choosing. But yeah, so I outlined the branch, the moon, and the stars with this bug pin 9 round liner. And yeah, it worked pretty good. Now I'm just rambling. I'm not sure what to talk about. Oh, I could say, I mean, I did the freaking dots so long ago, but whenever I tattoo dots, I always like do a little circle, like make a little circle with my needle. So you don't want to just like dot in because you could get a blowout. So I try to avoid blowouts at all costs. Try to pick up my needle. You should kind of try to not pick up your needle, but I always favor like a better angle and a better execution of the line versus like a one pass line kind of thing. And then, you know, as long as you're like airplaning it in, it should heal up pretty good. But yeah, I'm always like double checking my lines and like lining as I go. I guess you can kind of see in this one where I started with this the bug pin 9 round liner. I started with the dots just because, especially when you have a stencil with a lot of really little dots, the dots can fade, like the really fine dots will fade right out. It's like really hard to see, especially with all that ink. And then wiping the ink off wipes the stencil off more, so I definitely just hop straight in to finish those dots. They were getting light. Not that it matters, sometimes I can go overboard with the dots though, so I try to map them out ahead of time. But yeah, I did all the little dots, and then I did start, I think I did actually start from the bottom, that star at the bottom that was fading a little bit, and I worked my way like sort of to my left side, going as I go. And then for the branch, I gave myself the edge of the branch before I finished that like tip of the moon, so I didn't have to worry about like where am I stopping. You don't want to have like an overlapping line where you can see where the line ended a little bit too far in, and then your line's a little bit off. I don't know. No one can be perfect, but I definitely strive for perfection when it's on someone's body forever. These stars are always a little tricky, but I always love them because they turn out so cute. Now I'm going in with my Bug Pen 3 round liner. This is probably like one of my most used liners. I'm still debating. I don't know if there's any tattoo artists watching. I don't know if I like a Bug Pen 3 round liner or a Bug Pen 5 round liner for these like really fine lines. A lot of my like fine line stipple shaded stuff is a Bug Pen 3 round liner. I'm definitely like used to a 3 round liner. I've been practicing with it a lot. It's way more likely to like get a blowout and stuff like that, but especially for these inner lines, I feel like with color holding it in place, I really like it. But I feel like I haven't used the Bug Pen 5 round liner because I'm like, I gotta get myself to use thicker lines for the thick lines, you know, so I only have like a small window of line weights I can choose from. So maybe I'll get into the habit of using like a Bug Pen 5 round liner for something like that in the future, just to give it like a sturdier line, and then it would still have that contrast compared to, like, for the example, a 14 round shader. Looks like we're getting pretty close to the end of the line work. This branch, the little lines in the branch is all that I have left, so I just want to say thank you all for watching. Don't forget to comment down below, leave a like, let me know if you have any constructive criticism, otherwise I don't want to hear it, and if you have compliments, that works too. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love ya, and see you in the next one. Bye!